My name is Anna, and 3 months ago, my life turned completely upside down. It all started on that cold October night when I found a wounded being in the forest behind my house in Oregon. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea or just some water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. If someone had told me I would be here today telling this story, I would have laughed in their face. But after everything that happened, after everything I learned, I need to share this with you. It was an ordinary Thursday. I worked as a nurse at a small-town hospital, lived alone since my divorce, and my biggest concern was how to pay the bills at the end of the month. My life was a predictable routine, and to be honest, quite lonely. I would wake up at 6, work 12 hours, come home exhausted, watch Netflix, and sleep. That was it, every single day. That specific night, around 11:30, I was in the kitchen preparing tea before bed when I saw strange lights blinking outside. At first, I thought they were headlights from some car lost on the rural road, but the lights moved differently. They danced in the air, rising and falling as if they were alive. My curiosity spoke louder than fear. I grabbed a flashlight and went out the back door. The air was freezing and my breath formed small clouds of vapor. I followed the lights that seemed to move toward the dense forest behind my property. I walked for about 15 minutes, stumbling over branches and stones in the dark until the light simply disappeared. That's when I heard a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't exactly a moan or a cry, but something between the two. Something that expressed pain in a way that touched my heart directly. I pointed the flashlight toward the sound and almost dropped it from my hands. There, leaning against the trunk of a giant tree, was a humanoid figure approximately 5 feet tall. Its skin had a grayish tone that glowed slightly under the flashlight beam. And its eyes. My God. Its eyes were enormous, black as deep space, but conveyed ancient wisdom that made me tremble. It was clearly injured. Its left arm hung strangely, and there was a dark liquid, which I imagined to be blood flowing from a cut on its forehead. When our gazes met, I felt something I had never experienced before, an instant connection, as if our souls recognized each other. My nursing training spoke louder than any fear or shock. I approached slowly with my hands raised to show I meant no threat. "You're hurt," I whispered, knowing it probably wouldn't understand English, but hoping it would comprehend my intention through my tone of voice. To my complete surprise, it nodded slightly. Its eyes closed for a moment, as if it were making a tremendous effort to communicate. Then, almost telepathically, I felt a word forming in my mind. Help. It wasn't a voice I heard with my ears, but communication that happened directly in my consciousness. It was as if it had gently deposited that word in my thoughts. At that moment, I knew my life would never be the same again. I looked around the dark forest, thinking about the consequences of what I was about to do. If someone discovered, if the authorities knew. But when I looked again at those eyes full of pain and wisdom, I knew I had no choice. My humanity, my compassion, wouldn't allow me to leave it there to die. "I'll help you," I said quietly, and I saw something that could swear was gratitude pass through its eyes before it fainted completely in my arms. To fully understand what happened that night and in the days that followed, I need to tell you a bit about who I was before this extraordinary encounter. Anna Bennett, 36 years old, a nurse for 14 years, divorced for 4. My life was a succession of gray days without much purpose beyond surviving. The divorce had been devastating. Paul, my ex-husband, left me for a younger co-worker, claiming our life had become monotonous and dull. His words echoed in my mind every day. "Anna, you've lost your passion for life. Living with you is like living with a ghost." Maybe he was right. After the separation, I moved to this isolated little house in the Oregon mountains. Far from Portland, far from painful memories, far from everything. I purposely chose a place where I could hide from the world. The house was on a dirt road, surrounded by miles of dense forest. My nearest neighbor lived almost 2 miles away. I worked the night shift at the regional hospital from 7 at night to 7, 0 inches the morning. It was perfect for my new hermit personality. I slept during the day and worked when most people were home with their families. Less social interaction, fewer questions about my personal life, less pretending I was okay. My coworkers were kind, but I kept my distance. I refused invitations to happy hours, fellowship lunches, anything that could create bonds. I had built such a solid emotional wall around myself that sometimes I felt suffocated by it. At home, my routine was religious. I would arrive from work at 8:00 the morning, take a shower, eat something simple, and sleep until 5:00 the afternoon. I would wake up, have a quick meal, get ready, and go back to the hospital. Weekends were even worse. I spent hours watching series on Netflix just to fill the silent emptiness of the house. My mother called every Sunday, worried about my isolation. "Anna, you need to go out, meet new people, restart your life," she would say with that maternal tone that mixed affection and exasperation. I always replied that I was fine, that I needed time, that things would improve soon. Lies I repeated so much I almost came to believe them. The truth is, I had completely lost the meaning of life. I would wake up, work, sleep, repeat. It was like being trapped in an infinite loop of mediocrity. Even my work as a nurse, which used to bring me satisfaction from being able to help people, had become mechanical. I fulfilled my duties competently, but without passion, without that human connection that was once my motivation. Sometimes, especially during the silent early morning hours at the hospital, I would catch myself looking out the window and wondering if there was something more to life than that empty existence. I would look at the stars and feel an emptiness in my chest, as if an important part of me had died along with my marriage. There were moments when I would cry for no apparent reason in the shower, driving to work, or simply sitting on the couch. They were tears of deep sadness I couldn't even name. It wasn't just the pain of divorce, it was something bigger, more existential. It was the feeling of wasting my life, of being here on earth, just taking up space. My spirituality, which had once been important to me, had also disappeared. I stopped attending church, stopped praying, stopped believing there was a greater purpose for my existence. If God existed, He had certainly forgotten about me in that isolated Oregon forest. That was my mental and emotional state that fateful October night. A lost woman, disconnected, living on autopilot, without hope that something extraordinary could happen in her mundane life. If someone had told me that in a few hours I would be face to face with a being from another world, which would completely change my understanding of life, the universe, and my own purpose, I would have called a psychiatrist. But the universe, as I learned later, has much bigger plans than our limited mind can imagine. And sometimes when we're at our lowest point, most lost and hopeless, that's exactly when we're ready to receive the help we didn't even know we needed. Carrying an unconscious extraterrestrial being through a dark and steep forest was without a doubt one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Despite its smaller size, it was surprisingly heavy, as if its bones were made of a denser material than ours. Each step was a struggle against low branches, loose rocks, and my own emotional shock. My heart beat so hard I was sure it could be heard miles away. During the entire walk back home, my rational mind screamed that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. "Anna, you're carrying an alien. The government, the FBI, NASA, everyone will want to know about this." But there was something stronger than logic driving me, a deep intuition that I was doing the right thing. When I finally got home, I took it directly to the guest room on the ground floor. I placed it carefully on the bed and turned on the bedside table lamp. Under the clearer light, I could observe it better, and what I saw left me even more fascinated and scared at the same time. Its skin had an almost translucent texture, with silver-colored veins that pulsed gently beneath the surface. Its fingers were longer than ours, with extra joints, and ended in tips that seemed to be extremely sensitive. There was no hair on its body, and its head was proportionally larger than a human's, as if more space were needed to accommodate a more developed brain. But what most caught my attention were those enormous eyes. Even closed, I could see they occupied a large part of its face. There was an ethereal quality about it, as if it were made of solidified light. Its breathing was almost imperceptible, a subtle movement of the chest that seemed more like deep meditation than the involuntary act we know. My medical training kicked in. I examined its wounds carefully. The cut on the forehead wasn't deep, but it bled a liquid that wasn't red like ours. It was more like golden plasma that glowed slightly. Its left arm was clearly fractured, but the anatomy was different. The bones seemed to have a more flexible structure, less rigid than ours. I cleaned the forehead wound with warm water and sterilized gauze I always kept at home. The moment I touched its skin, I felt an electric sensation rise through my arm, like gentle but powerful energy. It wasn't unpleasant. Actually, it was almost comforting, as if my body were being bathed by a healing frequency. That's when it opened its eyes. I'll never forget that moment. Its eyes were like two miniature universes, deep and infinite, filled with stars that blinked in hypnotic patterns. For a moment, I felt like I was falling into them, losing myself in a cosmic vastness that my mind couldn't completely process. It looked at me with an expression I can't adequately describe in human words. It wasn't fear nor surprise. It was recognition, as if it already knew who I was, as if it had been waiting for me. Its lips, thin and silver-colored, didn't move. But again, I felt words forming in my mind. Anna Bennett, nurse, wounded soul. The words reached me loaded with such pure compassion that it brought tears to my eyes. How did it know my name? How did it know about my emotional pain? How do you... I began to ask aloud, but it gently raised its right hand, the one that wasn't injured, and placed it near my chest without physically touching me. Instantly, a wave of peace swept through my entire body, calming my frayed nerves. Communication different here. Its mental voice was soft as a cosmic whisper. Mind to mind, heart to heart. You not fear, I not harm. I realized it was making an effort to communicate in my language, translating thoughts from a completely different form of consciousness than ours. It was like watching someone trying to explain a symphony using only 3 notes. You need medical care, I said, my voice trembling. Your arm is broken and you're losing. Is that blood? Vital, fluid, it replied. Healing will happen. Time necessary. You kind. That's why. Chosen. Chosen? Chosen for what? It closed its eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength for a more complex explanation. When it opened them again, there was a depth in them that made me feel like I was looking at the accumulated wisdom of millennia. Anna, life without purpose, empty heart, but soul bright. You care for wounded beings. All life, earthly hospital, preparation for greater mission. I felt a shiver run down my spine. What mission? Bridge, it whispered mentally. Between worlds, between species, between dimensions. You were born for this. Divorce, isolation, pain, all preparation. Soul needed to break first to expand. Its words hit me like a lightning bolt of understanding. All the pain, all the loneliness, all the feeling of emptiness I had felt in recent years. Was it possible that all of this had a purpose? That I was being prepared for something beyond my understanding? I don't understand, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. You will understand, it said, and its right hand glowed with soft golden light. But first, healing, yours and mine. Together, we will heal. In the 3 days that followed, I cared for it with dedication I couldn't even explain to myself. I canceled my hospital shifts, claiming a severe flu. A lie that made me feel guilty but was necessary. How could I explain to my supervisor that I was caring for an extraterrestrial being in my guest room? During this period, our communication gradually deepened. It told me to call it Xylos, although it admitted this wasn't exactly its true name, but the closest translation my mind could process. True names are frequencies of light, not words, it explained. On the 2nd day, while I was changing the compress on its arm, which was healing at an impressive speed, Xylos began revealing information that completely changed my understanding of reality. Anna, it said mentally, its voice now stronger and clearer in my mind. You question why I here? Why you chosen? Time for greater truths. I sat in the chair beside the bed, my heart accelerating. There was solemnity in its communication that made me realize I was about to hear something extraordinary. My species, not just alien. We are, as you call, ancient souls, beings who evolved beyond physical form long ago. But we chose to incarnate again for specific mission. Specific mission? What kind of mission? Xylos tried to sit up in bed, and I helped, adjusting the pillows behind its back. Its enormous eyes stared at me with intensity that made my stomach churn. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Earth at critical moment. Humanity at point of choice can evolve to next consciousness level, or destroy itself in ignorance and fear. My people sent as catalysts. Catalysts for what? To awaken dormant capacities in selected humans. You, one of them, Anna. That's why you found me. It wasn't accident. It was cosmic synchronicity. I felt a tremor run through my entire body. What kind of capacities? Energy healing, expanded perception, interdimensional communication, connection with universal wisdom. Humans have all potential. Just forgot how to use it. It extended its right hand toward me, and instinctively, I placed my palm against it. At the moment of contact, a wave of energy coursed through my body. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just a sensation of peace. It was as if 1,000 years of knowledge were downloaded directly into my consciousness. I saw images of ancient civilizations that already possessed these abilities. Atlantis wasn't a myth. It was a human civilization that had reached this level of evolution, but destroyed itself when it used power for domination instead of service. I saw Egyptian temples where priests healed with just their hands. I saw Tibetan monks communicating telepathically across mountains. All of this was real? I asked, breathless. Always was real, never was lost, just slept. My species here to awaken those ready. You one of first, Anna, but not last. Why me? Why am I ready? Your pain broke ego walls, broken heart, opened space for universal love, loneliness, prepared you for cosmic connection, work as nurse, trained unconditional compassion. Everything was preparation. Tears streamed down my face as I began to understand all the suffering of recent years, all the feeling of emptiness and lack of purpose. It had all been a form of spiritual preparation for this moment. What exactly is my mission? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. First learn, develop abilities, then teach others, create network of awakened. Each person you awaken will awaken others, like waves in consciousness. Lake. What if I fail? What if I can't do it? Xylos smiled. The first clear facial expression I saw from it. It was a smile that conveyed ancient wisdom and unconditional love that made me cry even more. Failure doesn't exist, only experience. Each step part of path. Fear natural but unnecessary. You won't walk alone, Anna. Never alone again. Will you stay here on Earth? Some will stay, others return, but connection eternal now. Once human mind touches, superior consciousness portal remains open. You can always contact us. How? Deep meditation, sincere prayer. Moments of absolute silence. When ego quiets, superior soul emerges. There you will find us always. I remained silent for several minutes, processing everything I had heard. My entire life was being rewritten in front of me. All my concepts about reality, about my purpose, about what was possible, everything was being expanded beyond what I imagined possible. When do we start? I finally asked. Already started, it replied, its eyes shining with that cosmic light. The moment you chose to save me instead of running, your transformation began. Now next phase. What next phase? Demonstration. You need to see to believe completely. Tomorrow will show what's possible. That night, after Xylos fell asleep or entered what seemed to be a deep meditative state, I found myself alone with my thoughts for the first time in 3 days, and that's when the reality of what was happening really hit me like a tsunami of doubts and fears. I sat on the back porch of the house, looking at the forest where it all began, and my rational mind started screaming all the objections I had suppressed in recent days. Anna, you've gone completely insane, I whispered to myself. You're talking to an alien about cosmic missions and superhuman abilities. This isn't real. This can't be real. I began considering alternative explanations. Maybe I had suffered a nervous breakdown. Maybe all the stress of the divorce, the isolation, the depression. Maybe all of this had finally made me have a complete psychotic crisis. Maybe I was hallucinating everything, the being, the telepathic conversations, the visions of ancient civilizations. My God, I need psychiatric help, I murmured, putting my head in my hands. I'm probably lying in a psychiatric hospital bed, imagining all of this. I got up and walked back to the guest room. There it was, exactly where I had left it, breathing softly with that silver light pulsing under its translucent skin. Either it was real, or my hallucination was extraordinarily detailed and consistent. I watched it for several minutes, looking for any sign that my mind was creating all of this. But every detail remained solid, real, tangible. The weight of it when I carried it through the forest, the texture of its skin when I cleaned its wounds, the electric energy I felt with each touch. Everything seemed as real as any other experience in my life. But even if it were real, that didn't mean I should believe everything it had told me. What if it were just a common extraterrestrial being without special powers or cosmic missions? What if everything about ancient souls and awakening of humanity was just fantasy or even manipulation? Anna, a soft voice echoed in my mind. Xylos had awakened and was observing me with those deep eyes. You doubting? How can I not doubt? I replied, my frustration overflowing. You're asking me to believe things that go against everything I learned about reality in my entire life. I'm questioning my own mental sanity. Doubt natural, it replied calmly. Human mind programmed to reject the extraordinary survival mechanism that now limits evolution. But what if you're wrong about me? What if I'm not special at all? What if I'm just a divorced, depressed nurse who happened to find a wounded alien? Anna, look at me. Really look. Reluctantly, I approached the bed and faced its eyes. The moment our gazes connected, I felt again that sensation of falling into cosmic vastness. What do you see when you look at me? It asked. I see you, I replied hesitantly. Deeper, beyond physical form. What does your soul recognize in my soul? I forced myself to look deeper, beyond the alien characteristics, beyond fear and confusion. And then, for a fleeting moment, I saw something different. I saw pure light, ancient and wise. I saw unconditional love that transcended species and planets. I saw a soul that had chosen to incarnate in physical form to serve other beings. I seek goodness, I whispered. I see someone who genuinely cares. Now look at yourself in the mirror, it said, pointing to the mirror on the opposite wall. I looked at my reflection, and for a moment it was like looking at a stranger. But then, following its guidance, I tried to see beyond physical appearance, beyond the tired and wounded woman I thought I was. And for just an instant, I saw a golden glow around my silhouette. I saw light emanating from my chest, pulsing in sync with my heart. I saw a soul that had gone through many incarnations, accumulating wisdom and compassion through each life. Is this real? I asked, my voice trembling. More real than physical body, Xylos replied. Body is temporary, soul is eternal. And your soul, Anna, very ancient, very wise. You just forgot. But even with that momentary vision, doubts returned with full force. What if this is just wishful thinking? What if I'm only seeing what I want to see because my life is so empty? I need to believe I have some special purpose. Anna, fear of own power. Very common, humanity taught. They are small, insignificant, separated from divine. But truth is opposite. You are fragments of creation itself. That sounds like cosmic self-help talk, I said, crossing my arms defensively. Then test, it said simply. Tomorrow, demonstration. Not pretty words, real evidence. If not true, you'll be free to turn me over to authorities. If true, new life begins. What if I can't do it? What if I try to do what you're suggesting and fail miserably? Failure. Impossible. How can water fail to be wet? How can fire fail to be hot? You won't try to be what you already are. Just remember. I sighed deeply, feeling the weight of all possibilities and responsibilities accumulating on my shoulders. I'm very afraid, Xylos. Fear, gateway to courage. On other side of fear, freedom waits. You already went through so much suffering, Anna. Time to discover what it was for. A long moment passed in silence. Finally, I nodded reluctantly. All right, I'll try to have an open mind, but if this is some kind of trick or manipulation, then you will have learned. Valuable lesson about discernment. It completed with what I swore was a touch of cosmic humor in its mental voice. But Anna, soul recognizes soul. Deep inside, you already know all of this is true. It was right. And that scared me even more than any doubt. On the fourth day, Xylos was visibly stronger. Its arm had healed completely, something that should have taken weeks in human physiology, and the cut on its forehead had disappeared without leaving even a mark. Even more impressive, it could now stand and walk around the room, although it still moved carefully. Today, demonstration. It announced mentally first thing in the morning. You need to experience, not just believe. What exactly do you intend to show me? I asked, still feeling butterflies in my stomach because of the previous night's doubts. First, heal, then see beyond physical veil. Finally, connect with superior consciousness. Heal what? You're already healed. Xylos looked at me with an expression that conveyed infinite compassion. Not my body, Anna. You, me, but I'm not injured. I mean, physically I'm not. Soul wounds deeper than body wounds. Emotional scars block vital energy flow before awakening abilities need to heal traumas. I felt immediate resistance arise in my chest. I don't need alien therapy. Thank you. I've had enough therapy after the divorce. Mind therapy useful, but energy healing goes to root, removes blockages that words don't reach. Despite the resistance, there was a part of me that was curious. For years, I had carried a pain in my chest that no antidepressant had been able to completely relieve. It was as if a stone were lodged in my heart, heavy and cold. How does it work? I asked hesitantly. Lie on bed, close eyes, breathe deep, let body relax completely. I obeyed, although every fiber of my rationalist being was protesting. I lay down on my own bed, while Xylos positioned itself beside me, its hands hovering a few inches above my body. Now, feel, it said softly. At first, I felt nothing beyond my own breathing and the beating of my heart. But gradually, I began to perceive a sensation of warmth spreading through my body as if I were being bathed by an internal sun. What's happening? I whispered. Vital energy being realigned, chakras being cleansed, emotional trauma being dissolved. Suddenly, images began to appear in my mind. I saw my marriage crumbling, felt again the pain of betrayal, the feeling of inadequacy, anger, and sadness. But this time, instead of hurting me, these memories seemed to be being wrapped by a golden light that transformed pain into understanding. I saw that the divorce hadn't happened because I was defective or inadequate. I saw that Paul and I were simply on different evolutionary paths, and that forcing us to stay together would have prevented both our growth. I saw that my subsequent loneliness wasn't punishment, but preparation. Tears began streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of relief, of forgiveness, of deep understanding. The cold stone I had carried in my chest for years was dissolving, melting like ice under the sun. My God, I murmured. I can breathe. For the first time in years, I can breathe completely. First demonstration complete, said Xylos. Now, second, it helped me sit up in bed. I felt light, as if I had dropped a backpack of stones I had been carrying for years without realizing it. Look at your hands, it instructed. I looked down and almost screamed. My hands were glowing with soft golden light, pulsing in sync with my heart. The light was faint but definitely visible, as if my skin had become translucent and the energy within me was the source of illumination. Is this real? I asked, incredulous. Always was there. Now, blockages removed, can see. Every human being has this light. Most don't perceive because emotional traumas create veils of dense energy. What can I do with this? Same thing I did with you. Energy healing. Place hands over injured area of any living being, and energy flows naturally. To test, Xylos made a small cut on its own hand with a small tool that materialized from nowhere. Heal, it said simply. With my heart racing, I placed my hands over the cut. I concentrated on the intention to heal, to allow any positive energy to flow through me to it. To my absolute amazement, I saw the wound slowly closing under my palm, as if I were watching a slow-motion movie being played in reverse. Impossible, I whispered. For limited mind, yes. For expanded consciousness, natural as breathing. And now, what's the third demonstration? Deeper, it said, its eyes shining with that familiar cosmic light. Communication with my species, Other dimensions. Xylos sat in lotus position on the bed and instructed me to do the same, facing it. Place hands over mine, close eyes, empty mind of all thoughts. The moment our palms touched, I felt as if I were being launched out of my physical body. My consciousness expanded beyond the limits of the house, the city, the planet. Suddenly, I was floating in space, but not in the cold void we imagine. I was in a dimension filled with light, music, and conscious presence. I saw other beings like Xylos, but also beings of pure light, entities that had never needed physical form. There was communication happening not through words or even thoughts, but through direct transmission of knowledge and love. "Welcome, daughter of Earth." A collective voice resonated in my consciousness. "You awaken at a crucial moment. Your species stands at the threshold of great transformation." I saw Earth from a perspective I could never have imagined. I saw networks of light connecting all living beings. I saw how each action of love strengthened this network, and how each action of fear or hatred created holes in it. I saw that humanity was literally choosing through each individual thought and action between evolving into an enlightened species or self-destructing. "What is my role in this?" I asked. "To be a point of light in darkness. Each person you awaken will increase the network's luminosity. When critical mass is reached, planetary transformation will be inevitable." The vision ended abruptly, and I found myself back in my room looking at Xylos with tears streaming down my face. "Did this really happen?" I asked. "More real than physical reality," it replied. "Now you know. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And you're not without purpose." I looked at my hands, which still glowed softly, then at Xylos, then at my reflection in the wall mirror. For the first time in years, I recognized the person looking back at me. It wasn't just Anna Bennett, the divorced, depressed nurse. It was Anna, the healer, the bridge between worlds, the bearer of light. "I'm ready," I said finally. "I'm ready to learn everything." The next morning, I woke up with a completely different sensation. It was as if I had slept for years and finally awakened. The house seemed brighter, colors more vibrant, and there was pulsing energy in everything around me that I had never noticed before. But the biggest change was in myself. I felt a deep connection to something much greater than my individual existence. I found Xylos on the back porch contemplating the sunrise through the trees. Its posture had something majestic about it, as if it were an ancient sage disguised in alien form. "Today, final revelation," it said without turning, intuitively, knowing I had arrived, "about who we are truly." I sat beside it on the wooden bench. "I thought you had already told me. You are ancient souls on a mission to awaken humanity." Truth, but not complete truth. It turned to face me, and its eyes seemed to contain entire galaxies. "Prepare yourself, Anna. What I'm going to reveal will change your understanding of all existence. My species, your species, not two different species. We are same cosmic family. Humans are our creation." "Not exactly. Humans are ourselves at earlier stage of evolution." "What do you mean?" "Earth is dimensional school. Planet chosen for accelerated growth experiences. Souls that reach certain evolution level can choose two options: ascend to superior dimensions or return as teachers." I felt as if the ground were moving under my feet. "You're saying you once were human?" "Not just were. Some of us still are." "Anna, you're not just learning. You're remembering." "Remembering what?" Xylos extended its hand to me. "Allow me to show your own history." The moment I touched its skin, an avalanche of memories that weren't mine, or were they, flooded my consciousness. I saw myself in other eras, other planets, other forms. I saw a version of myself as a healer in a civilization that existed thousands of years ago on a distant moon, where beings of light taught energy medicine to evolving humanoids. I saw myself as a priestess in Atlantis, working in healing temples before the civilization's fall. I saw myself as an entity of pure consciousness, choosing to incarnate on present Earth to help in planetary transition. "This can't be real," I whispered, although I knew deep in my soul it was absolutely true. Each life, each experience, preparation for this life. Divorce, isolation, work as nurse, all chosen by yourself before incarnating. Soul, knew it would be necessary to break identification with ego, to remember superior mission. So I am like you. You are us. I am you. We are fragments of same universal consciousness, experimenting separation to no union. Difference is only level of remembrance. Tears of recognition streamed down my face. Everything made sense now. The feeling of not completely belonging to the human world. The medical intuition that allowed me to know things about patients that weren't in charts. The inexplicable attraction to stars since childhood. Everything was echoes of who I really was. Why do you choose physical forms so different from humans? I asked. Form follows function. When soul evolves, physical body reflects expanded consciousness. Larger eyes to see multiple dimensions. Larger head to process cosmic information. Smaller body because energy replaces physical strength. Will humans also evolve like this? Some, yes. Next generation of children being born already shows signs. Telepathic abilities, intuitive healing, natural connection with nature. You call them indigo children, crystal children. We call them new cosmic race. How many of us exist? How many people are really ancient souls in disguise? More than you imagine, less than necessary. Maybe 1 in every 1,000 humans is ancient soul-conscious submission. But when they awaken, each can awaken hundreds of others. Cascade effect. Suddenly, I understood why I had felt so alone throughout my entire life. It wasn't just post-divorce depression, it was homesickness. Longing for a home that existed beyond the stars. Longing for a cosmic family I had temporarily left behind. When can I go home? I asked, surprised by the intensity of nostalgia I felt. Home is here now, Anna. Earth is temporary home, but true home is expanded consciousness. When mission ends, you choose. Ascend to superior dimensions or remain as guardian of New Earth. New Earth? Earth, after transformation. Planet where all humans remember who they are. Where technology and spirituality work together. Where wars, diseases, poverty don't exist because collective consciousness creates only love. What if humanity doesn't choose this evolution? Xylos remained silent for a long moment, then evolved. Souls evacuate to other planets. Earth will be recycled. New species will try again. But do you believe we'll succeed? That's why we're here, Anna. That's why you're here. We believe in human potential. We believe love is stronger than fear. We believe time for transformation has come. I looked at my hands, which still glowed softly with that golden light. They weren't just human hands. They were instruments of cosmic healing, antennas of universal love, bridges between dimensions. What happens to you now? I asked. Your ship, your mission here. Ship doesn't need repairs. Accident was staged to ensure you would find me. Main mission complete. Are you leaving? Physically, yes, but connection eternal. Now, when you need guidance, meditate deeply. When you need healing, remember what you learned. When you feel fear, remember who you are. What if I forget? What if I go back to being just Anna, the divorced nurse? Impossible, it said with that cosmic smile. Once soul remembers, cannot unread. You changed, Anna, permanently, irreversibly, magnificently. At that moment, I understood that my life had really turned upside down. Not because I had saved a wounded alien, but because I had saved myself. I had reconnected with my true nature, my real purpose, my cosmic family. I'm ready to begin, I said, with certainty that came from the depths of my soul. You already began, it replied. Now it's time to fly. In the days following Xylos's departure, I experienced an internal transformation so profound, it was like being born again. But this time, conscious of who I really was. The woman who had isolated herself in the Oregon forest still existed, but now she was just a small part of a much vaster and multi-dimensional being. The first change I noticed was in my sensory perception. The world around me had become alive in a way I had never imagined possible. I could see vital energy flowing through trees like golden rivers of light. When I touched a plant, I felt its simple but joyful consciousness communicating with me. The birds that sang at my window weren't just making noise. They were sharing information about weather, about dangers, about the pure joy of being alive. But the most dramatic change happened when I returned to work at the hospital. The moment I entered the building, I was hit by a wave of sensations I had never experienced before. I could feel each patient's emotional and physical pain as if it were my own. I saw auras around each person, some bright and healthy, others dark and fragmented by illness or trauma. My first night back was with Mrs. Fletcher, an 80-year-old lady who had been hospitalized for 3 weeks with pneumonia that wasn't responding to antibiotics. The doctors were perplexed. All tests showed she should be improving, but her condition continued deteriorating. When I approached her bed, I immediately saw the problem. Her aura was fragmented with dark holes, especially concentrated in the chest and heart region. But it wasn't just pneumonia. There was deep sadness, despair that was literally sucking her life force. "Mrs. Fletcher," I said gently, sitting beside her bed. "How are you feeling today?" She looked at me with tired, tear-filled eyes. "Nurse Anna, I just want to go home. I miss my husband. He died 6 months ago. And since then, I feel like part of me died with him." Suddenly, I understood. It wasn't pneumonia keeping her sick. It was unprocessed grief, survivor's guilt, fear of moving forward without her companion of 55 years of marriage. May I hold your hand?" I asked. She nodded. And the moment our fingers touched, I channeled all the healing energy I had learned from Xylos. But it wasn't just energy. It was thoughts of love, of peace, of understanding about the soul's continuity beyond physical death. "Mrs. Fletcher," I whispered, "your husband hasn't gone. He's well, and he wants you to live. He wants you to heal and find joy again." I don't know how I knew this, but I knew. I could feel his spirit's presence in the room, sending love and encouragement to his wife. I shared this perception with her, not through words, but through the energetic connection between our hands. I saw tears of relief stream down her face, and her aura slowly began to reorganize. Dark holes closing, golden light returning to her energy field. The next day, her pneumonia had improved dramatically. A week later, she was discharged, completely healed. That was just the first of many miracles that began happening during my shifts. Patients with deep depression began finding hope after conversations with me. Children with severe anxiety would calm down when I simply remained in their presence. People in comas showed signs of improvement after I meditated beside their beds. My colleagues began to notice. "Anna, you're different," said Dr. Harrison, the chief physician, one afternoon. "Your patients are having extraordinary recovery rates. What changed?" How could I explain? How could I say I had discovered I was an ancient soul disguised as human, that I had learned energy healing from an extraterrestrial being, that I could see auras and communicate with spirits? "I think I finally found my passion for nursing again," I replied, which was technically true, although absurdly understated. The transformation wasn't limited to my work. At home, I began meditating regularly, following the instructions Xylos had given me. During these sessions, I frequently received guidance, not through audible voices, but through knowledge that simply appeared in my consciousness. I learned more advanced healing techniques. I discovered how to cleanse my own energy. After absorbing patients' negative emotions, most importantly, I began identifying other awakened ones, people who, like me, were ancient souls in disguise, but who hadn't yet completely remembered their true nature. There was Lucas, the hospital janitor, who had an incredible intuitive ability to know exactly when and where he was most needed, as if guided by superior intelligence. There was Chloe, a young resident doctor who could diagnose conditions other doctors missed using only her intuition. There was even Mrs. Yamamoto, the lady who ran the hospital cafeteria and who had the gift of making people instantly feel better just with her warm presence. Slowly, I began approaching these individuals, initiating careful conversations about spirituality, life purpose, unusual experiences. I didn't directly reveal what had happened to me, but I planted seeds, asking questions that led them to question their own extraordinary experiences. "Lucas," I asked one morning while he cleaned the hallway, "have you ever felt like you're here for a special reason? Like your life has a purpose, greater than just working and paying bills?" His eyes lit up in a way that told me everything I needed to know. "Nurse Anna, sometimes I feel like I don't know, like I'm a guardian of this place. Like my presence here makes some difference beyond keeping everything clean." What if I told you you're absolutely right? I replied with a smile. These small seeds of awakening I planted began to flourish. Chloe began trusting her medical intuition more. Lucas began meditating during breaks, feeling more connected to his role as the hospital's energetic guardian. Mrs. Yamamoto began subtly blessing the food she prepared, infusing it with intentions of healing and love. Each person who awakened to their true nature created waves of positive transformation around them. Patients recovered more quickly. The hospital environment became more harmonious. Even disputes among medical staff decreased. I was seeing in real time how the consciousness network Xylos had shown me really worked. Each point of light that turned on strengthened the entire network, creating a morphogenetic field of healing and love that affected everyone around. The lonely, depressed woman who had found a wounded alien in the forest no longer existed. In her place was Anna, the awakened one, the healer, the bridge between worlds. My life had really turned upside down, not destroyed, but completely rebuilt on a foundation of cosmic purpose and universal love. And this was just the beginning. 6 months after the encounter with Xylos, my understanding of life, death, suffering, and purpose had transformed completely. It was as if I had previously lived in a black and white version of reality, and now had discovered the world had always been colorful. I just didn't know how to see. What impressed me most was how my perspective on apparently negative events had changed. Before I saw tragedies, illnesses, losses, and suffering as random cruelties of the universe. Now I understood that each difficult experience was an opportunity for accelerated growth, a chance for the soul to expand its capacity for compassion and wisdom. When I received the call from my mother saying she had been diagnosed with breast cancer, my first reaction wasn't despair as it would have been before. Instead, I felt strange peace and certainty that this too was part of a greater plan. I traveled to Seattle to be with her during treatment. What she didn't expect was to find a completely transformed daughter, not just emotionally, but energetically. The moment I saw her in the hospital, I immediately perceived that cancer was just a symptom of something much deeper. Decades of repressed hurt, especially related to my father, who had abandoned us when I was a child. "Mom," I said, sitting beside her hospital bed, "can I ask you a question? Have you ever managed to forgive Dad for leaving?" Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "Anna, why are you asking this now? This isn't the time for—" "It's exactly the time," I interrupted gently. "The cancer in your chest in the heart area. It's not coincidence. Unprocessed emotions lodge in the body and eventually manifest as physical diseases. During the following weeks, I worked with my mother not just on traditional emotional support, but also on the energy healing I had learned. I helped her process decades of anger, resentment, feelings of abandonment, and inadequacy. It was a painful but transformative process. "How do you know these things, Anna?" she asked one afternoon, after a particularly intense session where she finally managed to forgive my father, and more importantly, forgive herself for all those years of bitterness. "I learned from a very special teacher," I replied, smiling as I thought of Xylos. "Someone who taught me that we're not just physical bodies living a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And sometimes what seems to be the worst thing that can happen is actually exactly what we need to grow." My mother's cancer responded to treatment in a way doctors considered exceptionally positive. But I knew the real healing had happened on emotional and spiritual levels first, allowing the physical body to simply follow along. During my stay in Seattle, I also had the opportunity to observe how my new understanding of reality affected other areas of life. My relationship with money, for example, had transformed completely. Before, I lived in constant financial anxiety, counting every penny, worried about not having enough for emergencies. Now, I understood that money was just energy, and that energy flows naturally when we're aligned with our purpose. Without actively seeking, financial opportunities began appearing. The hospital where I worked offered me well-paid overtime hours. A patient whose son had been healed through my care recommended me to care for his elderly mother as a private nurse on weekends. Even old investments I had forgotten began appreciating unexpectedly. It's like the universe conspires in your favor when you're doing what you came here to do. I told Chloe, my colleague who had become one of the first people I managed to completely awaken. I feel the same thing, she agreed. Since I started trusting my medical intuition, everything in my life has flowed more easily. It's like I stopped swimming against the current and started floating downstream. But perhaps the deepest change was in my understanding of relationships and love. Before meeting Xylos, I believed I needed another person to complete me, that romantic love was essential for happiness. The divorce had left me feeling broken or inadequate for love. Now I understood that true love begins with self-love and self-acceptance. That each person who crosses our path is a mirror reflecting aspects of ourselves we need to heal or celebrate. That relationships don't exist to complete us, but to help us grow and expand our capacity to love unconditionally. Curiously, as soon as I stopped desperately searching for a partner, I began attracting people much more aligned with my new frequency. I met Ethan, a physical therapist who worked with integrative medicine during an energy healing workshop I decided to attend. Our connection was immediate and deep, but in a completely different way from what I had experienced before. It wasn't based on need or lack, but on mutual recognition between two souls who were on similar paths of service and growth. "It's funny," Ethan said in one of our first conversations. "I feel like I've known you for a long time, not just in this life, you know." I smiled, remembering what Xylos had taught me about souls who choose to incarnate together repeatedly to help each other evolve. "I know exactly what you mean." My understanding of work and career had also transformed radically. Before I saw my job as a nurse just as a way to pay bills. Now I understood I had specifically chosen this profession even before incarnating, knowing it would put me in direct contact with people in moments of maximum vulnerability exactly when they're most open to transformation and healing. Each shift at the hospital became a sacred opportunity to serve to be a channel of healing, not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. I saw each patient not as a medical case, but as a courageous soul who had chosen a challenging experience to accelerate their growth. "You've completely changed the atmosphere of this ward," Dr. Harrison commented in a team meeting. "I don't know what you're doing differently, but patient satisfaction rates have skyrocketed since you returned from your time off." "I just remind them they're stronger than they think," I replied, "and that they're not alone." The most revolutionary understanding, however, was about death. Through my expanded connection with Xylos and other beings of light, I had understood that death is just a transition, like changing clothes or moving houses. The essence of who we are, our consciousness, our memories, our love, continues existing in a more expanded form. When Mrs. Higgins, a 90-year-old patient with whom I had developed a special connection, was in her final moments, I remained at her side, holding her hand. "Nurse, Anna," she whispered, "I'm afraid." "Of what, dear?" "Of what comes next. What if there's nothing? What if all of this is just the end?" I smiled and gently squeezed her hand. "Mrs. Higgins, can I tell you a secret? There is no end. There's only change. You're going home to your true home, and everyone you loved and who loved you will be waiting for you." When she exhaled her last breath, I saw her soul, a brilliant golden light, rising from the physical body. I also saw other beings of light, family members who had passed before her, surrounding her with love and welcome. There was no pain, no fear, just deep peace and joyous recognition. This new understanding about death transformed not just how I helped terminal patients, but how I lived my own life. Each day became a precious opportunity to learn, love, and serve. Knowing this physical existence is just one chapter in a much larger story. My life had truly turned upside down. Not in the sense of chaos or destruction, but in the sense of a completely inverted perspective that revealed a reality much more beautiful and meaningful than I had ever imagined. Today, 1 year after that encounter that changed everything, I'm here sharing my story with you because I know many of you are going through the same thing I went through. Maybe you're feeling lost, without purpose, as if life were just an endless succession of meaningless problems. Maybe you're going through a divorce, a loss, an illness, a financial crisis, or simply a deep feeling of existential emptiness. I want you to know it's not coincidence you arrived at this story today. It's not chance you dedicated your time to hear about a nurse who found a wounded alien in a forest. The universe conspired to bring this message to you at this exact moment of your life because your soul knows you're ready to hear a truth that can transform everything. Have you ever felt you don't completely belong to this world? That there's something greater waiting for you, but you don't know exactly what? That your current life, however comfortable it may be, seems too small for who you really are inside? These feelings aren't signs of ingratitude or mental instability. They're echoes of your true nature trying to communicate with you. They're subtle reminders of an ancient soul that chose to be here at this moment in humanity's history for a specific mission. If you're identifying with what I'm saying, let me ask some questions. Do you feel almost painful empathy for others' pain? Do you have intuitions about people that always prove right? Do you feel naturally attracted to healing, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual? Do you repeatedly dream of places you've never visited, but that seems strangely familiar? If you answered yes to any of these questions, there's a good chance you're one of those ancient souls Xylos told me about. A soul that chose to incarnate specifically now to help in the planetary transformation that's happening. And if you're going through difficulties now, if your life seems to be falling apart, if you've lost your job, relationship, health, or hope, this might not be punishment or bad luck. It might be preparation. The soul sometimes needs to break ego structures to remember who it really is. My divorce, my depression, my isolation, all of this was necessary to strip me of illusions that prevented me from accessing my true nature. Sometimes the universe needs to take away everything we thought defined us, so we can discover who we are beyond labels and social roles. You don't need to find a wounded alien in a forest to awaken. Your Xylos can come disguised in many forms. A book that falls into your hands at the right moment. A special person who crosses your path. A near-death experience. Deep meditation, or even a YouTube video like this one that resonates with something deep within you. The important thing is to be open to allow your rational mind, which was trained to reject the extraordinary, to make space for your soul's wisdom, which knows there are many more possibilities in this universe than we were taught to believe. If you feel this calling awakens something within you, start small. Dedicate 10 minutes a day to meditate. Even if it's just sitting in silence and observing your breath, pay attention to your dreams. They may contain important messages. Observe synchronicities, those coincidences that seem to happen exactly when you need them. Trust your intuition more. When you meet someone new, notice your first energetic impression of the person before your analytical mind starts making judgments. When you have to make a decision, feel which option expands your chest and which makes you contract, and mainly start seeing each person who crosses your path as a soul on a journey, not as a physical body with irritating problems. When you start radiating unconditional love, even in small doses, you'll be surprised how the world around you begins to respond. For those who feel they're already awakening, who already recognize signs of their special abilities, remember, you're not here to save the world alone. You're here to light your own light so brilliantly that it awakens the light in others. Each person you inspire to awaken will create waves of transformation that will touch hundreds of other lives. Don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid that others will think you've gone crazy when you start talking about energy, healing, spiritual purpose, or the possibility of extraterrestrial life. The people who matter will recognize authenticity in you, and those who ridicule simply aren't ready yet. And that's okay. You who are watching this video now are part of a consciousness network that's expanding across the planet. You may be geographically separated, but you're energetically connected in a common mission to elevate humanity's vibration through love, compassion, and wisdom. There's a consciousness revolution underway, and you, each one of you, are an essential part of it. Remember, you didn't save a wounded alien in a forest, but you saved something much more important. You saved yourselves from forgetting who you really are. Your life is about to turn upside down, but not in the sense of chaos. In the sense of discovering a reality much more beautiful and meaningful than you ever imagined possible. The awakening has already begun. The transformation is already underway. And you, dear awakened souls, are exactly who this world needs at this crucial moment of our collective evolution. Welcome back home. Welcome back to yourselves.